The movie kicks off with a guy named Chung Shet City, who can't see, but he's playing a gambling game with some folks. Surprisingly, he's pretty good at it, and he's winning a bunch of money this time, but the guys running the game think they can take advantage of him because he's blind. So they try to cheat him by raising the bets. Chung figures out their trick, but he can't do anything about it, and ends up losing almost all his money as they're about to grab his cash. This dude named Hu Fun shows up and starts yelling at the guys running the game. Chu Feng owns the place where they're gambling, and he says sorry to Chong and invites him to keep playing. But Chung's had enough, so he says no thanks and walks away, while Chong is on his way out. A bunch of people block his path, and it turns out it's Chu Feng and his crew. Even though Chong can't see, he manages to beat them up without breaking the sweat after taking care of Chu Fun and his buddies. Chung asks about a woman named Nan, who nobody seems to know where she is now we go back in time. About a month, Chong used to be a wanderer, and he was in a city where they hired tough fighters to catch bad guys and keep the place safe. Chung got hired as one of these fighters, and he got paid a good amount for it, so Chung was pretty tired and wanted a break. But then he caught a whiff of some amazing-smelling wine and followed the scent to a house getting ready for a big party. That's where he met a really pretty lady named Neon. She asked him why he was there, and he said he wanted to buy some of that delicious wine, but Nan told him it wasn't for sale, because they were going to serve it at a big party for her wedding hearing, that Chung decided it was best to leave. But later Manon felt bad for Chung when she found out he was blind. She gave him a few bottles of wine for free when they were trying to tie the wine onto Chun's horse. They got surprised there was a big sack wriggling like someone was inside. Chun spilled the beans and said the sack held a criminal on the run. Turns out Chung's a guy who catches bad guys for a living. To cut a long story short, the wedding party finally got started. Guests showed up to celebrate the bride and groom Nan and her husband, who looked really happy. But then things got weird when this guy named Niu, who's Nan's older brother and a warrior, showed up instead of being happy for his sister. Niu acted all annoying, and it made the guests uncomfortable, so they decided to leave the wedding after everyone had left. Michu went up to Chun, who was sitting alone sipping his drink. He tried to act tough and scare Chun, but it didn't work at all. Chun just ignored him and headed over to where his horse was tied up. He ended up crashing there because he had a bit too much to drink during the night. Chong woke up and decided to check out the banquet. To his shock, he found Niu and the groom lying dead. He started searching for Neon and found her in a bad state on the table. Now let's rewind 4 hours. Chu Feng and his crew barged into the banquet looking for Niu. Their boss, a guy named Yuan Y, ordered them to kill Niu and the groom. After that, Yuan and his guys did some terrible things to Nan. Before long, Chung stepped in to help Nan. He promised to assist her in getting revenge on Y and Ying and his gang the following day. Chung took the criminal he had caught to Mr. G, who was the guy in charge of keeping the city safe. What's interesting is that Chong's sharp instincts helped him stop an attempt to assassinate Mr. Ga by one of his own men. After getting his reward, Chung spilled the beans about the murder at Nan's place. Mr. Gall got all worked up and found an arrow that was the Ying family's signature. He explained that Yu and Ying was from a powerful and rich family in the city, and he really didn't want to mess with them. So Mr. Gall went to Nan and asked her to forgive Y and Ying and drop the idea of revenge because there was no way she could win against him, but Nan wouldn't back down, so Mr. G had no choice but to arrest her for bad-mouthing Y and Ying's family. When they were taking Nan to court, Chung stepped in and tried to get Mr. Ga to let her go. He said she was innocent and just a victim of the whole thing, but Mr. Gal insisted on sending her to jail. Chung wasn't having it, so he fought Mr. Ga and his guys, even though they were government folks. So after Chung beat Mr. Ga and his guys, he set Nan free and told her to get out of there fast, but she begged him to help her find justice in the royal capital, and Chung agreed to make a long story short. They finally got to the royal capital and decided to grab a bite at a diner to rest after their long journey after lunch. Neen said she was going to report the whole thing to the security forces in the royal capital. Chung told her to be careful and explained that he had to go meet someone and couldn't go with her. Right then, turns out Chong went to meet a lady named Chin Neem, who was his partner, and gave him important info that helped him catch criminals. Chung gave her some money, as thanks for all her help. Chin told Chong about a new job to catch a really big-time criminal who used to be the top dog in the city's underworld. She said it was a tough miss, but the pay was huge enough to get Chung's eyes fixed, so he could see again. Before long, a guy showed up at Chin's place carrying a wounded man with him. Turns out the injured guy was one of the bodyguards from the Yan family. The guy explained that Yuan was proposing to General Co's daughter, and their engagement party was all fun and games, until this woman crashed the party and hurt Yuan. When Shang heard this, he was pretty sure that the woman who hurt Yuan was Nan. The guy had called Nian a crazy woman, and Chung didn't like that at all. He gave the guy a piece of his mind about talking like that Chin, knowing that Chong was getting involved with the woman mixed up with the Yuan family, warned him to stay away from her. She said the Yuan family was super powerful and influential, especially now that Yuan was getting engaged to General Sio's daughter. But Chung didn't seem to care about Shin's advice. Instead, he headed straight to Yuan's place to find Nan. But when he got there, Nan was nowhere to be found. Turns out Yuan had caught her and thrown her into jail. Fast forward to the present. Chu Feng, who was already at Chong's mercy, spilled the beans about where they were keeping Nan. Chung wasted no time and rushed to rescue her after getting her out of there. Chung took Nan to Chin's place and asked Chin to tend to her injuries. As a healer, Chin couldn't just stand by when she saw Nan in such bad shape. Even though she knew there could be consequences for helping her, Chin decided to treat Nan anyway. After that, Chin assisted Chong in finding a safe spot to hide Nan, because if she stayed in the city, Yuan would eventually track her down. Meanwhile, Chun went back to deal with Chu Fun, whom he had locked up in a room. He used some not-so-pleasant methods to get information about why Yuan had killed Niu. Chu Feng spilled the beans that General Sio's daughter wanted the Night Pearl pendant as an engagement gift. Yuan was on a quest to find it, and it turned out to be a treasure that belonged to the late Emperor Han Yan, had ordered a gang of tomb raiders to snatch the pendant from the Emperor's resting place to keep this theft a secret from the Empire. Yan had killed the tomb raiders, including Nan's brother Nichu. With this new info, Chung tied a rope around Chu Feng's neck, connected it to a door, and waited. Soon enough, Yuan arrived, and when he opened the door, the rope snared him by the neck, leading to his demise. After one of his loyal underlings died, Ying got all fired up to find out who was behind all of this. He eventually discovered that Qin was somehow involved, so he ordered his goons to grab her. Ying then grilled Qin about Chong, the guy who had rescued Nan and taken down his men. Qin spilled the beans that Chong used to be a fierce warrior on the battlefield. But an illness had taken his sight. However, that didn't make him any less of a fighter. Meanwhile, Chung paid a visit to General Sio's place because he wanted to give the general a heads up about Yuan. But instead of listening, General Ko ordered his men to attack. Chong made quick work of them and raced upstairs to meet the general. But once again he was faced with General Sio's bodyguards. Chong explained that he was there to warn the general about Yuan, his future son-in-law, who was a bad dude. General Ko, hiding in the room, said Chun had no proof. That's when Chung spilled the beans about Yuan's crimes against Nian and her family, and he made it clear that he still planned to take Yuan down even if the general didn't believe him. Sometime later, an envoy from General Ko arrived at Yuan's place with some shock, position, and easily defeated him when Yuan tried to make a run for it. Chung didn't let him escape. He stabbed Yuan in the chest, ending his life. Chung had finally avenged Qin's death and sought justice for Nan against Yuan. After that, he returned to Nian and informed her about Yuan's demise and the defeat of his men. Chun even gave her some money to help her start fresh and leave behind all the pain she'd been through. So the moral of the story is sometimes the best revenge is a good game of blindfolded gambling and a strong sense of justice. Oh, and never underestimate a blind man with sharp,